Welcome back to Anime Savants, everyone. This week I am Tyon.
Oh shit. This week I am OG-san.
All right, and so this one, I feel like the previous two episodes, it's gonna be like a skip in like the time period, but you guys will get it when you get it. Let's hop into what we are watching with this insane fucking season, and not even to mention that the season coming after it isn't even like I don't have the time. I want to have the time, but there are only 24 hours in a day. So, was there anything new that you watched since the last time that we've spoken about?
Oh yeah. So
about this.
let's just start with the big one for me is I binged Summertime Rendering after multiple recommendations, and I very much enjoy it. I like the conceit of any show that deals with Groundhog Day type scenarios because it's the one way that you can kind of do time travel and causality stories without too much bullshit, because the rules are pretty clear, or you can at least establish some pretty clear rules so the story doesn't like completely invert on itself. This is sort of like like Muv-Luv, whatever, where they take the concept of there being multiple routes, and then each reincarnation or skip back through time is both an opportunity for the audience to experience other sides of events and stories that they may have missed because the perspective is locked to the protagonist, or at least in the case of Summertime Rendering, throwing a couple like twists in there where yes, there is repetition and time travel, but there are rules built into the storyline such that, for example, you find out very early that the distance and time he can go back is getting shorter and shorter. So rather than it being sort of a re-zero situation where the only threat you wind up having with the character is that it's possible that maybe some of the enemies in the story can get rid of him permanently somehow. You don't know because it's not explicit, but maybe like you can imagine a scenario where like, well, if they don't kill me completely, then like I'm fucked, right? In Summertime Rendering, because they introduce that aspect of the time, moving forward, it then allows you to just have a real ticking clock, even in a storyline where you are going back in time repetitiously. So that's the first thing. Second thing is that it was written pretty tightly, so details matter in stories where you're repeating.
Yeah.
And it's not just the details that the characters get, but it's also the thing hit to you visually. So even as I was watching, I was like, this is the type of show I would get a lot out of going back to. Like if I watched it from the first episode again, there are a lot of elements that I would pick up on that I would have missed not knowing what was important to pay attention to. And the show does a good job of calling out, but it doesn't explicitly call out all of them, which means that as a viewer, you can feel smart, which I think is if the show itself is not going to be smart, making you feel smart for paying attention is a great thing to do, and it was a lot of fun. The characters start off all very grounded, which is why the twist of the shadows, which comes in very early, works as well as it does, because you're sitting there thinking like, well, is this sort of a vanilla mystery story where we're just throwing in some supernatural elements in order to have there be something interesting that's happening? Well, they hit you with something very jarring and terrifying and supernatural in a heavy sense from the episode one, but sort of towards the end. So now you as a viewer, you're like, well, what's the range of horrible shit that can possibly happen to any of these characters? So I was down for that. The animation is very good. The music is very good. The setting being on like a southern island in Japan, you go for these like daytime scenes, they're not like glossy, but they're idyllic, right? Because it's an island and people in it are at first appear very like light and easy and breezy. It's all good. But they also juxtapose it with things that happen at night. And because the shadows are presented as such sort of inscrutable enemies, at least in the first half of the story, there's this level of threat that's kind of always there, because none of the characters, at least at first, have any way of knowing if the people that they're talking to are the real people, or are they the copies of the people who are actually shadows and therefore are the enemy? And
Oh.
that comes up a lot, both the paranoia of the main cast and particularly the main character, as well as we start to see sort of the other side, so the shadows perspective, and you start to learn what's going on the island, and how far back so much shit goes. That it even, I was like 16. I think I caught at whatever episode 16
I
or
think it's like 16 and
17. But
17 right now. Yeah.
yeah, so even as I was sort of getting to that, what feels like the final act being set up, or at least what is a penultimate act, there were still things that were surprising about what was really going on, what different people were capable of. You haven't watched it, right?
I watched the first episode.
Okay,
That was
so
it. Yeah.
I'm not gonna go any further into some of the major twists because they're good. They're actually worth being surprised by. That was the benefit of A, waiting so long to get to it, and B, going back to back to back. Sometime Rendering is not a series that I feel has gotten enough popular credit for
No, it
being really good
hasn't.
right now.
Well, I remember
But it is. It's a
Moody
good.
and Joe were talking about it.
Yeah,
Like they were
they
like singing
absolutely
the
put it over, and
praises.
they were the. I will credit them with poking me to finally get around to watching it. But because it's not like the show of the season or even going back before, it meant that I didn't run across any media. I just knew that it was like, yep, it looks cute in episode 1 and then it gets really dark really fast. That was all I knew about the show going in. And so it was surprising as we got into the deeper history and lore underneath the story. And one thing they do that I appreciate very doing early in a story is do the worst route, or at least routes, either if not first, very close to first.
Okay.
So that you kind of get a picture of what it is that you are trying to stop from happening. And then all the subsequent ways through as they march forward in time, it becomes more and more harrowing because you realize that the main cast has less and less to play with. And meanwhile, information may not be as impermanent as it seems. So felt like my whole experience watching was a lot of fun. And as it stands right now, I would recommend it, even if the ending winds up sort of being disappointing, because they
The
cover a lot of cool
journey.
shit. And there are multiple very, very well produced action scenes, like high production value, good effects, good animation, interesting concepts and ideas, characters who can do more than you think they can do, or less sometimes, which is also interesting, and some genuinely threatening villains, which having it is a big plus in this series. Not having it in some other series is why I am down on them more than maybe I was when I saw the premise of those things. So.
Okay.
Yeah.
I added on Yakuza Babysitters, or I just started watching it, and it's so good. I keep wanting to say like Gakuen Babysitters because I watch Gakuen Babysitters too, but the show does a really good job of kind of just like easing you into it in the first episode, and then the second episode, it's literally just like, all right, so here's the shit. Like, here we go. Like, this is actually what's going on. But the thing that I enjoy the most about the show is that it's extremely relatable. Not in the, oh, he's looking after the little girl, but just like how to deal with your emotions and how to deal with other people's emotions, and like what to say, what is the wrong thing to say, what's the right thing to say. And then you also have to take into account that it is also a child. And I think that the relationships also, like, I also appreciate that the father is not just like a Yakuza asshole, cold-hearted bitch who's just like, I can't look at my daughter's face. No, he's just like, I'm going through my shit too, but I can't ignore my daughter. Like, my daughter is hurt more than anybody. Listen, that second episode fucked me up. Fucked me up real good. Like, real good. They drove the point home of it's not like dark or like hopeless, but like it's just like the situation that they are in is just like, oh fuck, man. Like, whew, I never want to experience this. Like, shit. Great production value as far as like very simplistic, and there's a lot of emphasis on the eyes, especially with like the daughter. She's very emotive with her eyes because the rest of her face is kind of like like not dull, but just like very muted because
Not
she's
expressive.
not as expressive as everyone else. But that's primarily because she's so observant of her surroundings, and I like how she's an emotionally mature child, but she's not emotionally mature because of like drama or like trauma and shit like that, where like she has to grow up quickly. It's not. That's just like how she naturally is. So that's good. The comedy aspects are great, and the Yakuza aspects are great. Like I'm like watching it, and I'm like, yeah, they would like if I were playing a Yakuza game. This is exactly what would happen. We would beat those niggas' asses. Exactly.
Oh, I
Like,
like that reference. If it's Yakuza like,
yeah.
I'm in.
Yeah, I was like, oh wait, oh okay, because at first I was thinking, oh, are we just gonna like do him and like him around the school? It's like no, they're doing like Yakuza shit. They're doing like actual Yakuza shit, and I'm just like, okay, this makes it even better because it is very realistic. So, hey, I enjoyed that. I also watched Isekai fucking Uncle, and I have not laughed out loud like this in years. like the show is so good. First of all, it's just the voice actors are phenomenal. First of all, but the funniest scene where it was when nothing was said. It was when he saved the sister and her two little brothers, and they were just doing the emotes and
the faces killed me all over the series.
It was so fucking perfect.
And they
snuck
like, around.
The brother going like this, and the sister like pulling him back, and then she walks forward with the tears, and the little brother in the back is like, and then they try to. It was fucking perfect. It was perfect from the nurse. I knew the shit was gonna be good when the nurse came in and he was talking in the other language, and she was like, yeah,
yeah, sure.
and just went about her day. I was like, oh, this is great. Like they have really good comedy beats. It's so entertaining. It's so entertaining. Also, it like everything that you think or everything I thought was going to happen kind of happened, but that didn't make it disappointing because it was so good. Like when he was like, "Oh, the mermaid tears thing," I was like, "They gonna think that shit's like costume."
Yeah, what the fuck is that?
Yeah, like they don't care. And of course, he could get nothing for it. I do like the premise of like he does have his powers, so like that nigga was like, we don't need to get delivery, bitch. I'm just gonna go fly through the fucking air and get it. That was cool. Also, the internet haters and him being like semi-obsessed with them. I was like, this is so accurate. It's so accurate because you say that they don't get on your nerves, but then you see them comments and you're like, fuck you, bitch. If I could reach through the screen, you fucking anonymous whore. But it's so accurate. It's so fucking funny. And I'm glad. So is it only airing in Japan? They're not releasing it through like Crunchyroll?
Yeah, I think it's
like
just
Netflix
Japan style Netflix.
Yeah. If y'all can find a way to get to it, because holy shit. Like that was all I could think about for like the rest of the day. I was like, that was just such a really good fucking first episode. There are only 4 episodes out so far, so it's not that deep.
Yeah.
What else was I watching? I mean, Made in Abyss is going how Made in Abyss is going. I expect something to happen. I expect something. Okay. I mean, she almost got raped, but of whatever. Of course.
I mean, it's almost.
You know? Yeah. Just oh my god, like that fucking show. Okay, not gonna do that right now. Don Machi season 4. Very pleased so far.
Recommend?
I'm
okay,
pleased.
all right.
I'll
come around. Okay.
You don't have. You can wait till the end, but
I haven't watched this season. I've just been waiting on someone to tell me that it was worthwhile. That's all.
Literally, the first episode is them basically coming together and saying like, all this other shit is cute, but you have to beat the dungeon to do what you need to do. Like you have to beat the dungeon. Like you cannot like all the like the monster stuff. They were like, yeah, you wanna free the Xenos and stuff like that. You want this stuff, and that the sage thing came up to him and it was like, you're not gonna be able to do that shit unless you beat the dungeon. They were like, there's something at the bottom of the dungeon that's gonna uplift all this bullshit. and you got to beat it, or else these people are not going to accept monsters on the surface. That just is what the fuck it is. And so that in turn, that nigga was just like, oh, okay, so I got to beat the dungeon. And I'm like, yes, because the show is about picking up girls in the get back to the fucking dungeon.
We were so far away from that. We got so far
like you met the monsters in the dungeon and then brought the niggas out and I'm like, yeah, because you brought the niggas out that like we supposed to be in the dungeon. Like, I get it, but like, get your ass in the dungeon.
We're supposed to go into the dungeon, not out of the dungeon.
Yeah, and in one season we didn't even barely even touch the fucking dungeon. We were dealing with the fucking prostitute. I don't even know if they went in the red light district.
Yeah, like all that shit. They had the battle outside over like having a place to live, whatever the fuck.
Yeah,
that took
Apollo.
like 4 episodes. Did they even go to the dungeon once that season? Because he got stuck in the red light district. And then
I don't think so.
Outside of the town. They did everything but go to the dungeon.
And so now we're back in the dungeon. They've like invested in the supplementary characters, like showing how they're coming up, because he is level 4 now, and it's very obvious that he's level 4 because that nigga is like beast and shit. Like it's entertaining to watch him like fight just like the regular fucking monster shit. Which I mean, it's always, the action's always been good in the show, but that's good. Where they're at right now, at least for me, I'm enjoying it because the body gore this season is just like off the charts. Like that monster's fucking them niggas up. Homegirl got her shoulder blown to fucking pieces. Like, I'm like, hey, this is on brand, because they literally were like, yeah, it's the lower levels. Like, it's just a completely different fucking, like, it's a shit show. And within the second episode, by the end of that second episode, it was just like shit hit the fan. Like shit hit the fan, and now we're like going further into it. Even in the third episode, like that nigga, they dropped hints on things that he might encounter, and he is kind of encountering some of those things. But also, that's the interesting part about the fucking show, is that it's the dungeon, like it's living and breathing. And there's even one part of it that I've thought was so fucking cool, and I was like, see, this is what I like about it, is that when they were about to camp, they were destroying the ground and shit around them. And someone was like, why are you like breaking the ground and like lifting shit up? And they were like, well, the dungeon is living, so it has to take energy to repair itself, which means it can't spawn monsters to attack us. Mm-hmm. Right. And I was like, that's cool.
It's a cool concept.
Okay. Yeah. And I was like, now see, I just wanted this for like the whole time. Like, honestly, we could have been at the final boss by now at any other series, but I'm sticking with it because I am still enjoying it. It's definitely not giving me like, oh shit, all right, I'll stick through this shit to get to the Sakuga scene, I guess. Like, they're giving us a lot, like straight up from the front. So yeah, I'm enjoying it.
Well, that kind of falls on line. It's actually a relevant segue. So there are a lot of these isekai series where I'm watching most of them off and on. Mm-hmm. But I wanted to get to one of the first kind of like topic ideas that I came across from watching a lot of stuff this week that's related to kind of the evolution of where Danmachi seems to be going, i.e. having a story, introducing more systems. You know, I'm not saying it's a hard show like with a lot of like rules and everything else, but more of that you get, the better it gets, right? So I watched Harem. I'm just gonna call it Harem because like that's all it is.
Wait, no, did it get bad? Is it getting bad?
The last time we talked, we were at
he did the flashback in his head or some shit where like the sun, he gave the thing to the sun.
Yeah, so that was I believe like the beginning of episode 2. We're up to I think episode 5 or 6 at this point. Mm-hmm. And my complaint when I first started watching was, this is a hentai. That's what it is. It's by Passion. That's their gig. Is that they produce pretty like nice looking series that when you leave the uncensored bits in, it's just like a elaborate softcore hentai. That's what it is. I was weirded out in the first couple episodes because they were trying to be a real show. And the aspects of the plot and the story that they were building that would get to the hentai were very uncomfortable because they're not. And when we talk about some of the other like isekai shows that are running, you'll see that the themes are pretty much identical. But in this case, like the main character is just a perv, but outwardly presents himself like a very typical isekai main character, reserved, action oriented. It's darker, so he's willing to do horrible, brutal things. I would say horrible in how it's presented on screen, but like relative to the story, not actually super out of character. So I believe at the end of episode where we were at the end of episode 2, they had intimated that he could buy this hot, big-breasted slave woman, wolf woman, who he was like totally into. This
he could like fuck her whatever he wanted or whatever.
Yes, right. This pursuit of this slave becomes his entire motivation for the next 2 episodes.
Oh.
Except he's kind of broke. So whatever it costs to buy her, he doesn't have enough money. And so he's thinking around like, okay, what are the ways as a hero I can make some money? So he does the thing that you would expect to do. He goes into the dungeon, and the moment that he steps foot in the dungeon, all that other like subtext about like why he's there or like what his motivation was or like what the story is trying to build us to kind of goes out the window because it becomes a very grounded isekai series. He is forward, but there are limitations to what he can do, and he nearly dies on multiple occasions until he understands the rules of the game system that he has to play under as a hero character. He stumbles into a monster nest. He has to use tactics to just survive because he can't get out. He realizes that the only way he can, get through the situation is to constantly be killing enemies because he uses too much MP. He can only get it back with his special sword. You don't get the feeling that that his overpoweredness is to such a degree that you're kind of breezing through this very
he's having to
straightforward dungeon scenario. And when he succeeds, it's an actual feat. So at that point, I'm like, oh, okay. If got out all of the hentai part of this and just eliminated the edge of his character, he could be a perv. But if he's not trying to buy a fucking sex slave, then this is a very, very, very well realized, narrow isekai fantasy with pretty good production value. So okay, he gets to that part. What does he find out when he's done? He can kill all the monsters that he wants. It's not going to make him a lot of money. He'd have to be down there in that dungeon for years to be able to afford what he wants. So they hint at the end of episode 2 that there was a consequence for him slaughtering this episode, which was there's now a turf war in and around the city with the other groups, and you can make money on bounties. So he's like, this whole grinding the dungeon thing ain't gonna cut it if I want to get what I want. So maybe I could try, bounty hunting, but it's not easy because he realized he kind of got lucky the first time. They didn't expect him to have like an overpowered sword. He kind of caught a lot of guys who were higher level than him by surprise. Having been in the dungeon, he realizes his mana is both an advantage for what he can do with it, but also a serious limitation because when he overuses it, he becomes exhausted and also loses focus and becomes negative. I guess like I can't do that. He loses all his confidence and everything else like that. So it's an interesting way of representing the system.
Wait, this is a lot
so he
for a hentai.
Right. So then he has to like stealth kill a whole bunch of bandits, but he has to use a variety of methods. Trickery, using the bandit headband to get, certain people to not attack him on sight so they're in a certain position. There's a really grisly scene where his sword is so powerful it can one-shot anybody, but he can't wake anybody up inside of this building. So he assassinates all of them, but does it in the most like, I don't say like amateur way. The sword will go through a human like butter. So in order to but he's not skilled. He's not like a great fighter. So he puts like, someone will be sound asleep, quickly put a pillow over their head and then like put his sword straight down and cut their whole head off in like one move. And he keeps doing it, but then he fucks up. He's got to fight 2 people at once. He's like, in the dark. It's like tough shit, but he's just killing and killing. It's
Wait,
great.
but this
It's
sounds
actually
this sounds good though.
it's great. No, that part again. We're away from the motivation. We're away from the hentai aspects. We're just in a dark fantasy isekai story, bloody and cruel, but also like has rules. We're cool. Then he gets his money from selling these bounties, and he's worried that he's going to be marked a murderer because the way he killed these people gave him a new class involuntarily. And then he's like, "Oh wait, I can shift my active classes around, and then people can only see the ones that I have equipped." So that's why he kind of gets through the scenario of turning in the bounties without necessarily outing what he did. And then he gets some money, and then he buys his girl, and then we're like, "Oh, we're back to full on hentai," because the themes that they're going for don't exactly attach themselves to the porn that they want to make. So his new slave is actually like pretty into him and is like for no reason. I don't know why. She's into it, right? She has impossible body shape. I'll put it that way. It's so over the top where you're just like, this is a joke. This is not like slipping in some sex into my isekai fantasy. This is just grafted on like a pair of fake tits. Like it doesn't look. It's nothing about the way they put those two ideas together feels natural. And then we have a whole episode of him like trying to impress her and then buying her things, and she's so excited because no one ever treated her right, and you know all this stuff. And it ends with the weirdest, most awkwardly set up sex scene that if you use your brain for 3 seconds, you're like, everything about this is wrong. Everything about it is wrong.
Oh my God.
He is a slave master. That's what he is. She's constantly referring to him in that way. He can't stop thinking about fucking this thing. He's just like, it's in his mind. He's like, what am I gonna, I can't restrain myself. He literally throws himself at her at the moment she's like, yeah, it's I guess it's okay. So there's no point where you're watching it and you're like, oh, I guess I can like think around this. It's just like in your face, right there. And at that moment, I was desperate. Like, the series is at least it's being true to what it was trying to do in the beginning, and then fucking around with all this other real stuff. Because some real person wrote a real good story underneath that. I don't know why they did it, but they did. And then the next episode is like right back to a pretty interesting, well-realized isekai dark fantasy, and then the next episode that ends with another like awkward sexual moment, and then you're just like, oh, where am I supposed to be on the spectrum? Am I looking forward to learning more about the lore and the world and their dungeon diving and like the cooperation and the collaboration, them, you know, their relationship growing, whatever, or am I just trying to get through that shit to the porn that I'm here for? I'm just thinking like from an audience perspective, like which is it? Because they don't fit together very well. It's just it's a weird experience. It's very jarring.
Okay, but I'm even more so interested because I want to see like the world building shit with like the dungeon.
Yeah, and the thing is, because the porn has to be there, it takes up like 30% of the show. And so that means that the remaining 70% has to be very efficient about what its scope is and what it's trying to communicate about the world and about these, because the power system is very interesting. Like you get classes and abilities by doing things. Yeah. So if you're, you know, and there are requirements for different things, and he has some knowledge of the game. It's this little SAO-ish in the sense that he was a player, but he wasn't god like tier. He did whatever. He just bought the founders package. It was like, let's go. He just started with a bunch of good stuff. But then he realized that even being overpowered is not necessarily the best, because if you want to say unlock a class, or you're dealing with party mechanics and you want your party members to be able to unlock classes, he actually has to reduce his power level by a lot in order to create the situation he needs in order to get, you know, more options and more classes and everything. So there's thought that is put into this. It just it's the pieces don't fit. So I continue to watch it because I'm genuinely interested in one or the other. If you're gonna show me some good ass porn, just show the porn. And
I was gonna watch this like off channel, but now I feel like I need to record it. Like fuck.
I would almost argue, I've not watched the censored version, but I would almost argue that the censored version is probably a better experience if you're just like you want to enjoy the series and not be beaten over the head with the porn parts, because they don't actually like, this is not Ichizoku Reviewers, right? Which is a series that revels in its pornographic aspects, but the story and the character development, everything in it, all revolves around their sexual experiences. That is pornography with a good story. This is a good story, and then there's pornography grafted onto it, and it doesn't accomplish like the melding of the two. But they're both done at a very high level.
I just
doesn't do it.
It just sounds good to me. It sounds very much so entertaining.
It probably is, and for the people who are not embarrassed to like sample it and see that kind of thing, I think you'll get more out of it than you ever would expect. But I just go back all the time and say, like, was this necessary when you have such good stuff that's happening on the other side of the curtain that's good as well?
Well, maybe
it's
not stuff on the other side of the curtain wouldn't have got any attention if the porn was harder.
Right. I agree. And it goes back to how you would watch a little bit of Bastard, and it's like this old show. It's an old concept. It feels dated on purpose. It's trying to be retro, but a lot of the things that are retro is how at every turn there's fan service, there's sexual innuendo, there's partial nudity, but it's not the point of the show. Even the over-the-top gory kills are not the point of the show, of the series or the story. They just don't feel, they feel very 80s when you could just throw that kind of thing into the midst of an otherwise kind of like serious thing, and it's like the aesthetic. It's not out of nowhere. This just feels like a good hentai studio got greenlit to produce what I assume is a light novel. Someone will probably tell me that it's like there's a light novel out there or a visual novel or something, and they put their foot in it. Like, it's for whatever the budget was, they constrained the vision enough that all the parts individually are pretty good, quality wise, production wise. It's just, do I feel comfortable getting into like the relationship of these two characters when I know that in the porn scenes I'm hearing his internal monologue, and it's like, it's none of the things that I like. It worries me. It worries me that like this is sort of a type of fantasy that exists in a lot of the other shows that are actually running this season, but there's no self-awareness there. There's nothing like the writers are not looking back at me and saying, I know what this is. That's what I mean. Like, if it had, at the very beginning, if it wants to be an over-the-top porno, just do that.
Yeah.
Just do that. There's an audience for that. I respect it. It's not really like my thing, but it's cool. If you want to be a very grounded, hard, brutal, sort of isekai gamified fantasy story, power fantasy type of story, do that. Focus on that like 90%, and then you can sprinkle in, if you want to have all the women be like, just quadruple G cups, and hint at other stuff or whatever, go for it. I still cannot get over that flashback in season 2. It's like, there's consequences for everything everybody is doing, but there doesn't seem to be consequences for the mentality of that type of character and what it says about the audience that it's looking for. So that's Isekai Harem. Wow. Okay.
I mean,
remember, slavery, big tits, fan service, grounded, interesting world building. Now look at the other couple of isekai that are running, including Overlord, but like Black Summoner and Strongest Class, Sage with the Strongest Class.
Yeah.
Black Summoner has a lot more in common with Harem than I thought at all. Okay? Because on the surface, it's much more vanilla.
It is definitely
generally
vanilla.
A lot. Yeah, there's generally less fan service. There's obviously no porn component, but like the main character constantly says out loud in his own mind that he's trying to build a harem. He's trying to build a harem. He's trying to build a harem. That's what he wants, not because just that he's a perv, but this kind of character, again, is a cipher for its audience. The audience likes stories like that. So having the main character express a desire to live out that particular fantasy is a promise to the audience that either he's going to succeed and therefore they're going to get what they want, or that's a point of comedic contention where he's going to try to get that to happen and it doesn't work. Well, we're like 4 or 5 episodes deep now, and a lot of those things, a lot of the same tropes, a lot of the same, like, story construction is there. It's moving a little bit faster, and the story and the world is a little less well developed. But again, there's actually some decent world building. There's some decent character development. There's some interesting ideas about how to do action on a budget because there's more CGI. But it's like they just go for it. They're just like, fuck it. Okay, this shot we're totally drawn in, right? This shot, everybody CGI. It looks like I'm watching a cutscene from a video game, like a slightly above budget JRPG where they want to like battle in, so they cut to 3D, including like 3D mouth flaps.
Oh my god!
Sometimes they want to have dialogue that goes between a hand animated scene and a 3D one. Also, I had a revelation in the last episode where I think, and I don't know if this is true, I think they only made 3D models for the main character and then the Death Knight character because the Death Knight is the only character in the show that is almost always CGI in every scene. But our main character Kelvin is only sometimes CGI in the CGI scene. Sometimes he's drawn, and they've added a couple of additional party members, and they're never CGI. The slime, when they're have their face and they can emote, is always drawn. And then there's a new woman, the elf girl, who is a slave who now voluntarily dresses up in a maid outfit.
Oh my god.
Right? But the weird thing is that this series, it's all the same tropes as Harem. He's kind of a perv, kind of wants to build a harem himself. He's super overpowered. It's a gamified isekai world. There's a lot more conversation because he has more characters to bounce off of, but it's also probably less well drawn as a story than Harem was. But when they do the fan service scenes of like the slave girl who wants to share a bed with him and she's coming on to him, he's like, I want to do this. And then there's a self-aware moments where he's like, he looks at her slave collar and says, I can't do that. Right? Take what you want away from it. But like, again, they're playing with all the same ideas, right? They almost identical scenes, even where they go stay at an inn and the innkeeper wants to put the man and the woman together in the same room and kind of contrive the situation where they have to share beds. It's identical in both series. The girls get undressed. They're physically sleeping together. The only difference is that one is a hentai, so that the guy just fucks her, just like literally launches himself at his property problem. And in the other, he's interested in this girl, doesn't force himself, has a line of dialogue that says, if this goes any further, I won't be able to stop myself, which is super rapey and a very Japanese thing in a lot of series where somehow like these men, these girls are so hot. They're so hot. If nothing happens, I won't be able to stop myself. So that makes me feel fucking weird right there. Cause like this is the target audience is into that shit.
Yeah.
Right? They like that shit. But he stops himself and even has like a moment beyond the self-reflection of this is a slave girl. He says something like, and I'm paraphrasing, but this is making me want to buy a home and settle down. So he's looking at this woman that he has desire for, but he doesn't reciprocate her advances, even though, again, she is property to him, and she thinks he's the greatest person in the world because he cured her magical disease, that she couldn't touch anybody, and now he's the only person who gets to. Meanwhile, he's the most boring. Like, I would have left if that was that girl, and he clearly invited himself, like, great, Instagram time, I'll see you later, like, because I'm hot. But instead, she's, like, dedicated to this dude who is, like, completely, he's not unlikable, but he's just an average guy. But they don't do the extra step. There's some self-awareness. He's adding people to the party now. He got the demon girl added now, some other shit. Same themes. Overlord, same difference. Overpowered main character. Lots of super devoted hot women. The only difference in Overlord is he doesn't want to fuck any of them. So that's a positive. He doesn't seem to be able to fuck any of them. So that's a positive. He seems like he's more embarrassed by their come-ons, which get more and more ridiculous as the story goes on. This shit with Sheltier in the second episode of this season where she's like desperate to try to sit on his lap and he's like I don't want this to happen, but somehow it does. Then someone sees it, like, I want to sit in your lap too. And it's like, why did we waste 5 minutes with this? Like, this is embarrassing that this is happening in the show. We have so many other things that are more important that you're wasting scenes on this shit. Albedo losing her mind every time like he breathes in her general direction or looks at her. She's just like, just ready to. There's like, if they could have just had like a water park explode out of her.
They
her
would.
undergarments, right?
I'm surprised they haven't shown like her dress wet.
Yeah, it's like because they don't step over that line. But at least there again, there's some self-awareness. His goal has nothing to do with collecting women, even though they already collected all these women. At least it's better that he thinks of them more as like his friends' kids, like all the characters that are in Nazareth as his friends' kids. And at least they're moving the story. There's a lot of interesting stuff happening that's getting the plot moving way more than it was in the last the last season. Yep. So I'm enjoying it and actually looking forward to episodes now, especially because we got out of the castle. And they're doing a lot more with the inner monologue side. His, not Momonga and not Ainz, but the original human that is still trying to figure things out. That's one of my complaints. They're fixing that up, so that's fun. So if you're into it, go do that. And then the last one I'll talk about is just Sage with the strongest crest. I see where they're going. They want to They want to do a lot of bring in a lot of influences from other shows because they've added a couple of layers to the main character's personality that at least, if they don't lead to gags, they at least kind of explain his decision making.
Yeah,
like he's obsessed with delicious food. So a lot of his moving around in the world is arbitrarily dictated by where there's something good to eat, which then creates at least some natural motivation for him to go from place to place. He's not a womanizer or a ladies' man. There's very little in the way of like direct fan service. They have half of their episodes going into the backstory 2 weeks ago of all of the creatures that he's that are part of his team.
Okay.
The only problem is that there's not really yet a good villain to motivate like why things are going. He's piecing together there's a plot happening under the surface and getting involved in that. But like we spent a whole episode, could have been a Pokemon episode. Literally could have been an episode of Pokemon. The last one, episode 5, where like there are 2 assassins. They're from the organization that is like that he's been tangling with, and they don't know yet if he's the guy who's fucking with them. So they go to watch him, and he just wants to get off their list because he's trying to go live his life. So he decides that he's just going to try to pretend to be weak and stupid and a layabout. So they just assume that the person literally dropping like God's hammer on top of all their plans isn't him, it's somebody else. And that's a cool premise. The problem is it's so unbelievable. Like the logic makes sense. He's like, I'm a fool, these guys are gonna leave me alone, it's cool. But the whole episode that what's really going on is he's gonna build up his weakness, he's gonna fuck up, and then they'll realize he's really super powerful, and then he's gonna have to kill them. And so that part could have been like 4 or 5 minutes. It winds up taking like 3/4 of the runtime. The other quarter is character development for Proud Wolf, the wolf who's like a coward, which is good for a gag and actually is what makes the episode very Pokemon-like, because he's pretending like I'm the summoner, but my summons are weak. So he sends Proud Wolf out to go fight some local monsters to show off that he sucks, right? Because Proud Wolf is like, not great. Yeah. But then because he doesn't believe in him, Proud Wolf is like, this is my chance to show that I'm actually not worst person or the worst part. So he keeps getting the anime power up on the monsters they're fighting to the point where the main character starts buffing the monsters.
Oh my god!
That it's making him look like he's too strong because he's got this powerful wolf that's just kicking ass. And it escalates and escalates and escalates until he makes a mistake and leaves too many buffs on a monster that comes and attacks him. And by reflex, he pulls out his overpowered, sword and fucking dissects the dude in one shot. So basically, that's a cool concept for a tiny little story that's kind of funny, except that 3/4 of the way in, or maybe 80% of the way in, it completely undermines itself because now he has to go back and just kill these people. So it's like, what actually did we benefit from spending a whole episode on? Not much. But there was character development, and things are moving in the direction of a plot. So I'm like, cool. So if I take these all together, I just worry when I look at like what is the audience for this shit? What is the audience? It's these, they want power fantasies with women in them, subservient and impossibly attractive and attracted to the main character, but they only exist to like give compliments. They don't have any character of their own. And then they also want these like just slow moving, repetitious. Yeah, they're yeah, 100% insert. But it's like they're all the same idea. Every one of these series at some level is playing the same story ideas. Fuck the isekai part. They're just very similar to each other. And I don't know how we got like this many in one
because
season.
them niggas are buying
I think I prefer harem
like,
over all of them. Yeah, probably.
Yeah, because they're buying it, they're investing, they're showing the support. So like it's like different variations of the same person.
Yep, that's 100%. They all have blue themed outfits. Yeah, black and blue. Someone's trying to be Kirito light.
Black
Somebody
hair.
Else is. I don't even know. Yeah.
Oh Lord, Kirito.
I want character and I want villains.
Ages.
Yeah.
Villains.
Give me good characters and villains. Villain. Someone, an antagonist to drive the action of the show, to center things on one topic. These whole like, we're gonna wander around a fantasy world. Like, they have the laziest, most bottom of the barrel kind of storytelling because most of these worlds are not interesting. Like Overlord has a lot of variety. I don't know if any of it is like adding up to a really cool place that I want to know more about. But it's like there's variety in there and there's a lot of character. Now, do you like all the characters? Do they make any sense? A lot of them don't. A lot of them are very shallow. But they do quantity over quality there.
They really do.
On the other end of the spectrum, you have something.
And
you have like harem, which endless. Well, I didn't want to bring that up, but there was that.
Yeah.
Harem is like a tiny set of characters, like tiny. We're talking like maybe there's like 2 or maybe 3 named characters so far at all in the whole.
Oh wow!
It's so narrow. That's what I'm saying. They don't have the hentai gets in the way of doing anything else. But because the cast is so small, you actually learn quite a bit about who they are in respect to like the world, and the world building has to be utilitarian and to the point and interesting. And there is actually quite a bit. I wish that it didn't have those other parts, not because they're bad, but because in the runtime could be filled with learning more about what was going on. So it's these 2 weird ends of the spectrum and then in series. So that, I don't know. That's like, I don't think I'm ever going to talk about all 4 of them again, but weirdly, of the 4, I'm probably most interested in harem.
Yeah,
but it's not for the reasons I think that the show intends me to be interested in it. And then everything else kind of
they wanted horny niggas and they got y'all for something else.
Yeah, and it's like, again, it's not even like the something else is like A+. It's just like, oh, there was some thought put in. It's of the 4 isekai shows with powers and everything else that are there, this system and the systems they have in this one, I'm more interested in seeing that kind of a power fantasy than I am in any of the other ones. Like, I don't know what that says about either me or that content, but it is what it is.
I think it says a lot about the content.
So did you watch anything?
I think I said everything. I mean, the only other thing that I watched, I think I said all the new ones that I had watched. I mean, Classroom is still going. That's banger as usual. Devil's a Part-Timer still going. The only thing I really had like any like feelings about was Don Machi, because we just hadn't brought it up on here yet, and like I had my reservations, but I am very much so pleased. I'm very pleased.
So I guess then we can talk about the various either their premieres or they are announcements. Or kind of half and half. So you have the Witch from Mercury had the prologue episode release in the last week, and it's really episode 1. I mean, I thought we weren't gonna see anything of this series, and then I was just scrolling and it was like, oh boy, it's out. And I expected just like, here's a scene, like 10 minutes.
Yeah,
I think 24 minutes. I'm like, wait, we getting an episode. So what I'll say about it, because the show hasn't come out yet and we're not in a review mode. If you are interested at all in the next alternate century Gundam, or you're just like, hey, people like giant robots, where do I get in? And on a show from the beginning,
Boy.
this is giving me a lot of the same vibes as IBO. It may not be as brutal overall as even the type of storytelling they're going to be going for, but in this first episode, we see all the themes that they're setting up for the series, and especially the idea that the Gundams are hated by the public not because they're war machines, but because they kill their pilots, and so they look at them as an
Oh.
inhumane weapon to be using. And the main character might be, we don't know, but there may be something about her that allows her to get around one of the side effects that is killing the pilots of it, even though she watches it kill her own father and mother. So that's why
Holy
the
shit.
setup in the beginning of the story is that she's kind of an unknown person, with no background, that somehow has this Gundam. And that is a really cool concept. We don't know anything else about it because the prologue was just her as a like 6-year-old, and then it ends with how
Oh.
she gets sent away or separated from everybody. I'm very curious about how then the rest of the main story progressed from here. But I was just like, I love it, I love it, I love it, I love it, I love it. Music
Off to the
great.
good start.
um
Okay.
Mecha design great. I was worried because I'm like, I've seen when they go rounded and more like
Mm-hmm.
natural looking body shapes in some of the alternate century stuff, and a lot of it doesn't look good. Like Gundam Age is a perfect example of one where I did not like the mechanical design.
Oh. Yeah.
I didn't like it. But it's a nice sweet spot between the very chunky and detail design from IBO and what kind of feels like, I don't even know where to put this aesthetic, but like some of the you actually like the unicorn, like Gundam unicorn sort of redesigns of
Uh-huh.
a lot of classic suits, because in the UC side of things, like the Gundams kind of got sleeker and sleeker and sleeker, and
Yeah.
so there's some meld there of like what they were doing in IBO and what they were doing kind of the newer UC looking
Now that
mechanical
you
design.
say
I
that
think it
about
looks
Iron
great.
Blooded Orphans, the Gundams definitely were kind of chunky in that bitch outside of
Yeah,
Barbatos.
they'd have this weird dichotomy between like very mechanical, very like industrial looking design, and
Yeah.
then like even in the main Gundam, it's like you have like the upper body is like that, and then like the middle torso is super like
Yeah.
narrow and like and a lot of the suits kind of had that dichotomy even in one suit. So this is sort of somehow a mixture of like that design philosophy and the unicorn era. Let's call it like the 2010s reboot of a lot of the Gundam designs and more like a modern look. Like a lot of the sleeves Zaku stuff was great because these round. They look very round and less industrial, less kind of simplified. A lot of good details, a lot of good special effects, and not just battle. Like to show what it's like in the environments. There's a lot of like little details that I thought were great. So I would recommend anyone go and take a look at that if they're excited for the series or just want to check out
Speaking
what's
of
going on.
Gundam, if you guys order anything from Hobby Link Japan, just know that you probably will be paying the same price for the shipping as you did for the actual Gunpla.
Yeah.
So just a warning, because I learned that myself today, and I was
Maybe
like,
hit me up like you haven't ordered nothing in a while. I'm like, I know, because that shipping is crazy.
"Oh my god!" I was like, "This is the same price." I like, what do you mean you need this for shipping? Oh my goodness. Anyways, I'm looking forward to it. I haven't watched it. I like saw that release, but because it was prologue, I was like, oh, that's probably like 5 minutes or some shit. Like, I'll just watch the actual stuff when it drops. And now you're
Mm-hmm.
like, it's an episode. I'm like, well, shit. Let me go ahead and slide on through there. That's probably what's delaying the next Super fucking Robot Wars. They gotta get her ass in that bitch, or they have to wait for this season to complete,
I
or the
mean, I
series to
don't know.
complete, or whatever. Actually, because they're probably going to be doing multiple seasons of this shit if it's going to hit. So, what other news is there? Oh, I mean, this is good news for you. Well, not good news for you, but this is something that you said. But no, we're saving that one for last. No, we're not. We're saving that. We're saving that for last. So Kaiju number 8, the anime's coming, which I saw someone say that they were like, oh, there's not enough material for an anime yet, and I'm like, huh?
No, there definitely is, but it's gonna be like the Spy Family problem where they'll get 2 of the arcs in, and then
Uh-huh.
they're gonna have to wait like 2.5 years for there to be enough
Oh.
afterwards to do another 2 arc kind of series.
Okay, that's fine with me. Well, I would prefer
Yeah,
for them to
yeah.
wait as opposed to doing like superfluous filler. So
Yeah, and the weird thing is that it's a series that could have a lot of pretty easy to write filler. I would not like that if they did it.
oh.
Because it has, like the beat of a shonen storyline is always like threat, train, beat, threat, and you come down a bit, and then you go threat, train, beat, threat, and you come down a bit. Because it has that pattern, if you throw anything in there that disrupts the flow, if like filler or whatever else, the problem is that you need the characters to be learning and improving, and you can't break that off to go waste time because there's really no good spots to where you're not going to have any character development, which is really the issue with filler, is that you can't you're
It's
on a
not
pathway for
canon.
the storyline. Yeah, it's not canon, or if it's gonna become canon, it can't change anything. So that's why it feels so unnatural, is because it's like this story that is literally irrelevant. Where they end has to be where they started for all the characters, which is not how you do good storytelling.
Yeah.
So I hope they don't. I hope they just wait. But it will be good because even if you like, very few shows are based on series where the original material could just double as your storyboard, right? Like there's just so much detail in the artwork, but it could be simplified for TV, I think, much more easily stylistically than some other stuff. So I'm looking forward to it.
I don't have anything else except for the one thing that I care about.
The only thing I will bring up is that if you are not someone who is watching Yurei Deco,
Mm.
this is a pretty good. It's about the halfway point for the series, and it's kind
Yeah.
of settled into what I think is like the real rhythm of what they're doing, because they had to kind of get a lot of stuff out of the way in the first few episodes, and I get a lot out of this show every week. So I would just suggest that if folks have heard about it and they're like, "Oh, okay, maybe I either want to, I didn't get it, wasn't watching it when it came out, and do I wait till the end of the season or do I start now?" I would say this is actually a good time to start if you want to watch something while it's airing. So that's the
Okay.
only bit of yeah. But okay, let's talk about what we probably both want to talk about a
Okay.
lot.
So holy shit, didn't see it coming. Y'all know what the fuck we're talking about. Tower of God season 2. Bitch. Bitch. My niggas and
Yep.
niggettes. What the fuck? I did not. I just like. This was so out of nowhere. Like, I had given up. It has been years since I've given up on a series, like, animated wise, and gone and actually read the material. Because I was literally just like, I needed more. And all I could think about was, I need more, I need more. And of course, like, we've talked about it, like, so many times on here. One day I was just like, I'm just gonna go fucking read it because we're never gonna get it. And now, here we are. Crunchyroll is a. So, this is it. Like they're stuck for the long run. That's it. And I have reservations, but I'm kind of, but also I'm just happy that it's being done, and it can be redone. Like they can redo it, but how fast are they gonna take things? Like it needs time. We can't do this in 12 episodes.
I have a prediction. If it gets a 12 episode run, they're only
Mm-hmm.
going to do the form up to the formation of Team Sweet and Sour. So
Okay.
that one floor test where you meet Wong Nong and
Yeah.
Akraptor
That's what I was
and
thinking it was going to be, but I
Prince.
saw someone say something about the workship, and I was like,
Yeah, so the key art
no.
that they released just for the only shows, I think Wong Nan is in that art. And you
Yeah.
see like
And
Bam and his
Veal.
Veal
Yeah.
Grace, all, yeah, right, with the long hair. I agree with you. If it's 12 episodes, that's all I want to see. If that's all we
Yeah.
got, I only want to see that whatever floor that is. If it's, I don't remember which one it was. I only want to see that one. But if we get more, even if it's not a 24 episode order, even if it is a, let's say a 16 or an 18, I
Yeah.
am fine with them compressing that particular story if we could just get the workshop battle. Problem with the workshop battle, a lot of problems,
There's a
is that
lot.
there's a lot.
There's a lot going
There's a
on.
lot. Yeah, actually a hell. It's so much more in the workshop battle than there is in that, like, King of the Red Light District stuff, like prior. I think one is 40 chapters and the other is like 80.
Yeah.
So there's the distribution of what you do with that story. I just feel like you don't get the bang for your buck unless you do the workshop battle, because it is such an important part of the story. This is kind of like a preview or prologue to the workshop battle.
It is.
And chapters, like, the way you should produce 40 chapters is like a 20 episode or maybe 18 episode call, right, for a season order. You should be about 2 or 2.5 chapters per episode to really, and even that involves cutting down a lot, even in a normal length manga. But like, that's usually a good enough ratio for what would be a 2 core, or a little shorter than a 2 core.
Yeah.
If they're trying to do the workshop thing, I would almost say call it like a season in a movie, because the workshop battle has to get a lot of attention. And there's like multiple stages. All the stuff, like first of all, getting onto the boat is its own long ass thing that has a lot of moving parts.
The night before the fucking battle.
Right? Yep, that's right. For the actual tournament on the boat.
Yes.
Them coming back with Veal, and he actually, meets the team again.
Yes.
And then the final battle, which involves like Yama's dude. Yeah. Oh yeah. All right. The multiple betrayals. Then you're not gonna have that. You absolutely cannot have another God of High School situation. They got away in season 1 of Tower of God, cutting a lot of material.
And you know what?
Because the stuff that they removed,
I didn't even know how much they cut until I went and read it, and I was like, Jesus Christ.
Yes, they got away with cutting a hell of a lot of material.
It can't work.
Most of the stuff they cut was like conversations that secondary characters had, and they excised basically all of Endorsey and Bam's relationship building.
Yeah.
They cut almost 100% of it out of the story entirely. Like you're like, it's crazy actually, because if you get to the end, if all you did was watch the show and then like you got more of Endorsey and Anak like
going at each other
or like tolerating each other, then you did Bam, and that storyline is the motivation for everything that happens up through and past the work. Like, I don't know how you get that back. I don't know what you do about that, because Dorsey's willing to go to lengths for this dude who in the TV series she like ate lunch with once time
and talked to Rachel about him in the fucking bathroom.
Yeah, right. Yes, in the bathroom, and there was one hallway scene between her and Rachel, I think, where they passed it. That is it. Like, that's the extent. They cut all that shit and a lot more. So I don't know what they do. I don't know what to even hope for. Should we hope for a big season order, or do we hope for a shorter and they only just do that one little bit?
I'm just gonna say I'm happy for now.
Okay.
I don't want to curse it by like saying something that I mean, I'm happy, I'm nervous, but also I just feel like the more attention it gets, the better. That's about it. I didn't think I was gonna see this shit animated for another like 10 years before someone else like picked it
At
up.
all.
Yeah, or at all. Yeah, I thought they dropped this shit and they were just gonna own the rights and let it die, but they're continuing. Which this is a humongous undertaking. Like if they're gonna keep going, it's oh my god, like that's a huge but they have the money now. They have more than enough money to do it. So I don't want it to be. I think I saw also someone else say they were like they should just make Tower of God a weekly series, and I don't think that's gonna work. There now it could with the amount of stuff that's in it, it could be, but they'd have to start all over. Like
that's a bad idea. And the reason why it's a bad idea is that it has nothing to do with the amount of content. It's about how episodes are produced under different circumstances. When you get what we would call like a seasonal order, so that's usually for 12 episodes.
Yeah.
You get to backload about, I want to say about 70 to 80% of your production prior to when the series starts. And then usually there's some lingering stuff left over. Like you'll have maybe 6 episodes in the can totally done. The next like 4 episodes are mostly there. They probably need either like finishing touches or other, post-production. And then maybe when you start the season, there might be the last couple episodes which are 50% of the way finished, but maybe like, you're going to spend your next 2 months getting those episodes together.
Yeah.
And that's why when series when they have a production problem, like I would argue that like
86
was it 86, the last episode of World Trigger. There's like a couple of those out there. What happened was Wonder they came Egg. In right. They probably came into the season not 80% finished, but maybe 60%. And so those last episodes that were part of the order, they were behind on, and that's why they get pushed out of cycle. When you do a weekly like Black Clover, a lot of things gotta change. Number one, the amount of money that you usually get per episode is a lot lower. Okay, so that's the biggest issue for what you want to call like a prestige series. Yeah, I think who's doing Tower of God? Was it it's not A1. What was it? Another big one that we like. Was Mappa doing Tower? I think Mappa did Tower of God.
Wait, Mappa did Tower of God?
They didn't? I think they did. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't remember who did it. I'm not looking it up right now. But
I can't remember either. I'll look it up. Go ahead.
Regardless of who did it, when they got their series order, and they got it way like over a year and a half before the show actually aired, they could finish what they needed to. The show was basically, in fact, the thing that held up the production, if I remember right, was the recording for the music, because they had to go to Russia and record live. Kevin Penkin and that Russian opera band, it was a Russian production for a lot of the music, right? And it was live, it was on site. So that actually was probably the biggest time sink. Was that part. You go weekly, bruh, even if you're only going to do 1 year's worth, you don't get to have half or more of your production in the bag. At that point, you're guaranteed to run into time crunch even before a quarter of your aired season is running, because you're not done with most of those episodes that are going to come at the end of the year. And at best, you might get like a few weeks here and there off of your production schedule to catch up. But that's why you see things like when Dragon Ball Super was running, and they would have these like episodes that were very clearly, they just said, fuck it. Because like, if we don't just stop like doing the corrections and everything, we're actually not going to meet our schedule for the next whatever episode. And they come on the Blu-ray and be like, oh, we fix this. Remember all those memes of Goku's face? How it looked ridiculous, right? That's what you run into when you go weekly, even if you got all this material to cover. It would have been better for the quality to have it split and give that production team time to rest, but also time to get ahead of the work for the next season. So as much as I would love for like Tower of God to drop with like a 52 episode order and we're gonna get Tower of God all year, I just don't think that's going to be any good. So that's why I thought like, oh, if they get a 12 or one core order, let them do that one little arc, 40
Mm-hmm.
chapters. You don't need to cut too much. I mean, it's not going to happen, but you could slow things down a bit, and then maybe do a movie if you want to cover the workshop battle, because that format is easier to manage. It take a couple of years to do, but like that's good. Alternatively, you're going to have to jam 80 to 90 chapters worth of material into another core. I don't know about that.
They just need to spread it out. Just do 12 at a time. Spread it out. It's
Yeah.
gonna be like fucking 50 seasons anyway. So like, just spread it out.
It'll take to animate this. I wouldn't even be shocked if some of the producers who were on season one will be dead by the time it is finished animating all the content.
Yeah.
It's very likely, actually, that they will probably be dead if such a thing were to happen. So I wanted to pick your brain also on another side of this, which is, to my knowledge, I think this is the only series that is officially under the Crunchyroll original banner that was announced or is at least expected to
Continue.
air next year at all. I mean, period. I don't think that is there anything else.
No, we haven't heard anything about Tower of God. But I remember you said that you heard from someone that they were like throwing ideas around for originals.
Yeah, they are. But as of right now, the only one that would, I mean, okay, if you include their collaboration on Shenmue, which aired on Adult Swim originally, it is technically under the Crunchyroll Originals umbrella. But
Yeah,
there's
and I
pretty much nothing else, Like,
the
I don't
studio's
even know what
Telecom
happened.
Animation Film.
Yeah, but that studio is a bunch of ex people from somewhere else. So I think that they were
Yeah, they were
XA1 or Xma.
fuck, where's that thing at? Yeah, I have no idea where they came from then, because I don't. They did Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood, or like no, they were like over Bones, or like collaborating with Bones on Brotherhood.
Maybe that's what I'm thinking. Like they're one of those top studios. A lot of the people in it are former whatever, but it's
Oh,
not coming to
okay.
mind exactly who they are. But like okay, so things that they're now considering originals, I'll ask what your opinion is on this. So Fina Pirate Princess, primarily funded by Warner Media,
Mm-hmm.
primarily. So that wasn't Crunchyroll, and I think they were the ones who. I think did Bones actually do that one? Was Bones behind Fina?
No, Fina
Who was behind Fina?
Pirate Princess Kaizoku Oju. It was not Bone. Production IG.
Production IG. Okay. If you actually look at the series that they have now roped in under the Crunchyroll original banner, Crunchyroll / Sony is not paying for them. They are not managing any of the studios that are doing them, and in a lot of cases, they're not really even involved in the what do you call it, the production group. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
so it's literally just a rebrand. All of them, that were paid for by someone else, managed by someone else, and whatever. Crunchyroll's original strategy was they were going to be part of the production group. They were going to finance a lot of those series, and they were going to be involved in the production of both original stuff, as like they had their own, or part of the finishing, like the polish. They subcontracted a bunch of studios do that. As far as I know, after the release of all the staff on High Guardian Spice, Crunchyroll doesn't actually have any either partner studios or internal studios doing much of anything right now.
I don't think
That's just
so.
from what I know.
Yeah.
Tower of God, which I basically wrote off as never existing again, is strictly happening because Webtoon and Naver have more money than God, and
Yeah.
seem to have just forced the issue because the only way they can release it in America is through Crunchyroll because of the weird contractual IP situation they entered into with them
Yeah.
like 5 or 6 years ago, or five, maybe it was 5 years ago. This is such a weird situation to me because like the originals banner doesn't mean anything right now. As far as I'm concerned, like any of the things I listed, do you consider Fina a Crunchyroll show? No. The
No.
Blade Runner Black Lotus, is that a Crunchyroll show? No. Shenmue, is that a Crunchyroll show? No. High Guardian Spice, that's a Crunchyroll show, but it sucks. And you
Yes.
could just go to you go down the list. So I'm just trying to get my brain around what the fuck is a Crunchyroll original. What does that even mean?
It's like what Netflix does. They just put their name on it.
But Netflix is still they're still
Well, they
investing in their
fund.
strategy.
Yeah, they do
Yeah,
fund.
they
Yeah.
still do that. I mean, the thing about Netflix, even though there's been all this collapse of their animation division, a lot of like the kids in YA especially, that
Yeah.
part of it, they have been committed to their strategy of we're just going to fund other studios to go make stuff that airs directly through us, and then on top of doing that, we also license stuff into their Netflix originals program that was just made in general. Because I think Isekai Uncle is one of those shows, right?
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's a
and that
net
one
yeah.
is it's designed actually more for when it comes out. It's simulcast. It's released on both Japanese and sides of their platform simultaneously. This is like Japan only, and they are broadcasting it week to week for the Japanese audience because that's how the viewing pattern is different over there. So I buy what is a Netflix original, right? I totally buy it. I know what they're paying for. I know how they funnel their releases. I know the studios they like to work with. They don't really have any in-house anything over there. So like at least I understand that system. I'm gonna get and then their strategy of like buying old IP that nobody wants, Bastard, what do you call it? Spriggan,
Spriggan.
the Western Grappler Baki stuff or whatever. Like they clearly are moving forward with whatever that strategy is. I don't have any fucking idea what Crunchyroll is doing at all. I
I
have
don't think
no
they
clue.
have an idea. I think they're probably still trying to figure it out. But you saying that like Webtoon forced this shit through for a Tower of God, I'm glad because I had zero faith that this was going to happen. That actually explains it a lot to me. The fact that they were like, this is too huge for you to just sit on this fucking like IP license. Like, do something or we'll like, yeah.
Right. Like like they have the power. Before, I don't know if you got this vibe. I can't confirm this. I mean, I probably have people I could ask who could clarify a little bit, but my gut feeling is that back when they announced that slate of manhwa adaptations, and it was this part of this big deal that they had with Webtoon to bring a
Mm-hmm.
lot of those products over, I got the feeling that it kind of was Crunchyroll trying to hoover up a bunch of IP that a lot of other venues or companies that could have been involved didn't see a lot of value in.
Yeah.
Right? Like
Yeah.
at the time, webtoons were huge, but they weren't ubiquitous. And outside of Korea and China, there was a lot of resistance to adaptations of webtoons through traditional anime studios. It had happened plenty of times. I mean, you go down a list of like Korean IPs that you don't realize are Korean. You know what I mean? Like they'll have a Japanese name, so you'll just lose track of the fact that it came from the other side. But it felt like Crunchyroll was in control. They were leveraging their the size of their audience base in the U.S. and kind of like I don't know, I don't want to say taking advantage of. It's too strong a word, but they thought that they were buying into something that was they were bigger than, and they were they were cornering a type of market, but it was a small market. Today, with Tower of God getting announced and the failure of all their other shows, it almost feels like the role has reversed.
Yeah.
And that Crunchyroll, as a subsidiary of Sony, is kind of being like bullied around, or at least used by Webtoon and Naver, who have been making money hand over fucking fist, over that entire period, just getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And I just think the roles in this deal have somehow flip flopped. Where like Crunchyroll's like, we're kind of out of the originals business. We've cut all of our studios. This plan is over. All the executives who were pushing it are no longer with the company. And Webtoon stuck their hand up. Is like, hey, motherfucker, I'm pretty sure we had a deal for you to produce multiple seasons of this shit, and we want it done. And it's our money anyway, so get to fucking stepping.
Yeah.
And we got what we got. But that's what I feel. I don't know if that's actually true. But
well, whatever happened, I'm just glad that we are getting it. Although, if whoever was in charge of the first season is doing this one, I hope they learned their lesson. And if it's new people, then I hope they paid attention. I mean, I feel like this is almost the same thing with like Yasuke and what was his first one again? Shit.
I see it in my head.
Fuck, I see it too.
Whatever.
Yeah. But like, it's one of those things where it's kind of just like, you're giving like, there's another chance has been given. So like, let's make this like, let's show the growth. Let's show the lessons were learned. And like, that will let people be forgiving, or that will encourage people to be forgiving in case that, because I'm not expecting it to be fucking perfect and flawless. It's a lot of material they're going to have to cut. But it's what you cut, how you do it, and just do not stuff the workshop arc into 4 episodes. Like, I swear to God.
That I would, I have some big problems.
Swear to God. Like, then you might just don't even keep going. There's too much foreshadowing.
Big problems.
There's too much foreshadowing. In that arc alone, with Bomb not even part of it. You cannot cut... Like, you cannot condense it. It's just not fucking possible.
Okay, so the only thing I will guess at, if you were gonna cut shit down, not from the workshop arc, but from the bit with Wong Na and all that stuff, you could probably get away with losing a lot of the first part of that story.
Yes.
Where like all you gotta do is just show him like in debt, working as like, what is it, pizza?
I was gonna say that, yeah.
We don't
need
like,
his full history of him suffering in that city for like those years. I don't care about that.
We don't need that shit. We can even just like
the ring,
3 scenes,
just the ring.
Yes, yeah. In 3 scenes, we could just introduce that character, tell us his situation, have his final invite, and then have him go to the test like location, and then just show everybody who's gonna be there. So we get the full cast, and we can do that in like half an episode.
The test.
And just go right, exactly. Just go right in. I don't know if that saves you enough time to do more than just tell that part of the story very cleanly.
I don't think that part is actually like super duper necessary. I think like the interactions and how everything starts to get formed, that's the more important part of that. And also there really isn't that much foreshadowing, because like what is foreshadowed with him comes up several times, like throughout the remainder of the story. I just
realized, there's also the scene before all that where you see Kun.
No! I expect the season to start with that scene.
But I'm just saying, if they
cut that scene, I'm going to rage.
Like, if you're really serious about what you could do that you could lose as much of the details we did in season 1, that could be a place that they look at and they're
actually, you know what? They might do with what they did in season 1. I think they moved something around.
Yeah, they did. They moved in the very first scene where Bomb and Head On and Rach and Bomb and Head On. You don't realize that Rachel was there the whole time. The original manhwa, you do see
her.
In those, like, he leaves, Bomb goes, and then it goes right to, oh, I see you over there. Rachel was there, and she saw that. She questions like, why did he get help? Why did and he's like, oh, the tower didn't choose you. And then all that. So all that stuff they put at the end, the last episode, was in the first chapter of the manhwa, or second, maybe it was the second chapter. Yeah, second, because it ends with her the first chapter ends with us being revealed that she was there. The second chapter begins with him talking to her, and then at the end of that chapter, Baum wakes up in the field for the first
Yeah.
test of the floor test. Yeah. So they cut that. So things like that, moving some stuff around, I don't mind. I don't mind you move some stuff around, though.
They cannot cut that. That was my favorite part because that was one of the first chapters of me like getting beyond the first season of the anime, and that I was just like, he knows, he fucking knows. I was like, oh my! It shaped the entire fucking thing. I was like, I can't wait for them to get this bitch. And right, I mean, right. And what we all don't know. We know what happens. Y'all. Some of y'all are probably just being like, "Why the fuck do y'all talk about this shit so much?" Because it's good. Just, fuck. It's like it's
our show.
One of the best fucking IPs like of our time. Like my God, and I hope CU is recovering or getting the rest that he needs, because you can't just reintroduce that bitch and disappear like that.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, no, they can't. If they cut that scene, like, I will cyberbully like the intern. Oh. Like, I will do it. Like, I will cyberbully. I'll be like, no one cares. Like, oh my God. Oh my goodness. No, they have to know that like is necessary. That's like them cutting the scene where Rachel like shoots that nigga's like legs out. Like it, like no, like it's all of that is. But then that's gonna be the problem. What are they gonna judge is worthy? Mm-hmm.
So it's coming. Do I feel like I want any of the other revisited? I don't think I do. I love God of High School, but I don't think there's a way that they can unwind the production of that first season.
Reading
I think
through God of High School
ultimately
is just a completely different experience, like as you've said, but like also reading through those arcs myself and then going back and like tiptoeing through the episodes, I'm like, what the fuck? There were like so many there was so much shit that happened in between this. Like, what? They did it. They rushed to get to the action.
And a lot of the things that they rushed to get to weren't even the things that you would want to rush to get to. Like, I don't want to beat a dead horse, but like that whole wedding angle, they spent a whole episode on that. Like, there was no reason to do any of it, because the fact that how do I say this? There are things that you can just say, you know what? We're gonna cut it, scrap it. We're gonna speed through this. We're gonna reduce it to a couple of lines. I mean, I get it. You had an ambitious target, but at least choose the right parts to get your pacing back down to normal before you rush out. They would spend time on things that, to me, I was like, hey, that's the part you should have cut. The other stuff was like jarring because it happened. So there's things that you can do fast or faster that actually don't come off as bad. But like there are other things that are fine when they're slow, but become unbearable and terrible when you put it on like ultra fast forward. I don't know how to say that, but it's sort of like, when you make a meal, there's times when you can cut corners and it's okay, and there's other times where like cutting corners fucks up the chemistry. And that happened there. So I don't think I want to see them come back to that property, which is a fucking shame, because God of High School, just from a content point of view, easily could be up there with any other major shonen IP. If you can do Black Clover right, which it's actually a difficult series on paper to get right, and it took them a while. It took the
it did.
Studio Pierrot a long time to figure out like how do you present and pace this story, which I would argue in manga form is paced very well. It's just at a consistent high clip every single chapter, but you're going chapter by chapter. Yeah, that's one of the things. Like, I never thought that Black Clover was like, should be in this upper tier of anything. But one of the things I enjoyed about reading the manga was that it wasn't boring because it kept moving at like the same pace pretty much until the much more recent stuff where you have like fights that take, God knows how many episodes to just get through. So, like it's one thing where you have to take a slow series and make it faster, or take a fast series and make it slower. It's something completely different to take a well-paced series and then figure out where you have to make it faster or make it slower in order for it to work for TV.
Yeah.
God of High School is one of those challenges. They failed, but they may have failed in such a way that we just don't get it ever again, which is a shame.
By them, maybe someone
Yes,
else
they
will pick
fucked
it
that up.
up.
Yeah.
Yeah. Someone
Well,
else
I
might be
don't know
able
if
to pick it
anyone
up.
can pick it up because of that weird deal that
How long is that deal supposed to
what's the name?
last?
That's the thing. I don't know a lot of the details, but I just know that these IP, the ownership of the Western distribution, um,
Okay.
is now owned by Sony through Crunchyroll.
Oh, so that's probably
That's
a
all I
minute.
know.
Ugh.
Yeah, and they're not on the production team for it. So it's one of the. This is actually not. I mean, get another topic, but this is a problem that has fucked over a lot of my favorite media. One of the reasons, for example, like it's taken forever to get any more
Robotech.
Marvel. Well, no, Robotech
Oh.
is a good example. No, Harmony Gold is actually an evil company that hate money. They're idiots. But I was gonna say something more like the like Marvel versus games, where when the
Oh.
deals were made for all of that intellectual property to be used by Capcom, they were made when Marvel games didn't even exist. It was just Marvel the comic company, and they were
Mm-hmm.
licensing out to all sorts of different people all sorts of things. But they gave uh see if I remember this right. So they gave certain companies exclusive deals for like all video games, right? So like EA, or I don't know if EA, probably EA. You now have rights to all of our video game stuff. Well, that was when they were owned by Disney. Their rights for all the stuff before that are like in 10,000 different places.
Yeah.
Now and that has made it almost impossible to do things like re-release the original Marvel versus Capcom
Because Disney's not
versus
gonna let that shit
games.
happen ever.
Right, or they have to renegotiate all of that stuff, and it's like before they could just say you could just use whatever you want, right? That's your license. Go pick some characters and use them however you want. In 2022, maybe the depictions of the characters in those games are something that Disney might actually object to, or they
Yeah.
wouldn't want all of those characters in the game, or they would want to have separate licensing deals for each one, because Iron Man's value as an IP in 1994
Is
is very
nothing
different than it is in
compared to now.
2022 after a bunch of mainstream Hollywood movies that made $1 billion. You know what I mean? So because of that, I can't get any more of that stuff, or they have to find loopholes to like get these games out. Same here, I think, is that they sold the rights to the distribution of a lot of this IP in animated form under one deal. Everything about the power dynamics, management, strategy has changed in 5 years, and they fucked some of them up. You know what I mean? Like, Noblesse is fucked.
Oh, I didn't even give that a try.
God of High School is like, as an IP, it's worth less to the distributor because they were the ones who fucked it up, but they don't own it. And the only hit they got that was critically acclaimed was Tower of God, and so they may have gotten strong armed a little bit
Wait,
into.
is Penkin doing the music again?
I would hope so. I would assume so.
I'm just gonna assume he is. Yeah.
I
Oh.
mean, I would. It would be a real hell if.
I
Yeah.
mean, this
So
just has me
I'm gonna
excited to go
pretend.
back and read through. Just go back and read through the workshop arc, and then probably just read through all of it all over again.
Oh, I
Anyways, to be
did
honest.
that like 6 months ago. It was great.
Yeah.
I forgot so much stuff in there.
Which is probably still coming up to this day.
Oh, 100%, 100%. So that's all I got to really say about that. I don't know, any more details other than a lot of people got fired, and on the Crunchyroll side. A lot of people got let go as part of the merger with
Oh,
or the acquisition by Sony,
yeah.
and almost none of the people who were in charge of the originals program still work for the company. So
Oh.
you do with that information what you want. I don't even know if that's necessarily a bad thing, but it's a weird situation because they didn't announce anything else.
Mm, we'll see. Hopefully, it doesn't like not come after they announced it.
But I don't need that
That would be
energy. I
so
want to keep
bad.
my optimism.
Yeah.
Let's keep that shit.
There's plenty of stuff to keep us busy in the meantime, anyways.
Facts.
What else? I mean,
So
that
that's
was
it
the
for
only
me.
news I cared about, to be honest, y'all. Y'all already know what my recommendation is gonna be. It's fucking Xenoblade Chronicles 3. Like I have not moved for the most part. It's so it's so it's just good. It's just good. Um, how do I say it? I know a lot of people hated Xenoblade 2 because of the anime ish ness tropes, shit like that. But I have to say I miss it for Xenoblade 3. It's like a mixture of like 1 and 2, which isn't bad, but I don't know that no that's kind of like spoiler-ish. Anyways, yeah, it's really good. Go get it, you guys. It's one of them. It's just I'm gonna no life the game. I'm going to 100% it. Like, well, I already know life did story wise. I'm almost done with the story, but even that took a fucking long time. The class system is fucking addictive as fuck. Although the one thing that I do think, or I wish that they would have done, is for the classes, when you like look in the menu, you can see all the classes. I wish they hadn't put that there because it's easy to like go and look at like the class and kind of like the outfit and basically be like, oh, I know who that is, or like, oh, I know who this is, and
Yeah,
that person there.
it kind of like spoils a lot, a whole
Yeah,
lot.
yeah, yeah. And I noticed that like the moment the classes were unlocked and I got that menu, I was like, oh shit, I can just see like everything here.
Yeah.
So, but still, it was still well, not it was still. I'm still playing it right now. Like this fucking boss battle is taking me like an hour right now. It's fucking paused. It's really fucking great. Entertaining, and the animatedness is there. The chain attacks, the I would. Oh wait, my favorite part is the Nopon are fucking phenomenal. Those voice line, whoever is the writer this time around for the Nopon, fucking phenomenal job. Especially whoever did
I
Riku's shit. Like,
I hated the no pawn characters and other. Well, not hated. I found them to be jarring.
mm-hmm.
But in this game, they finally managed to do justice by making those characters both comic relief and funny. Because that's how this motherfucker. How does this motherfucker have an afro? This motherfucker Riku. What?
I have no. I'm just
going
like
on?
whatever. No, it's the dialogue even for the
Yes,
Nopon who aren't voiced. So
yes.
there's one Nopon at one of the camps where you talk to him where he's literally just like, yeah, I just
Shouting.
love. No, he's not shouting. There's one who's just like, don't you just love selling shit with the backdrop of war and destruction? And I'm like, what? I was like, what the fuck are you talking about?
My favorite two conversations in the entire story are the ones that take place outside of the Agnian colony that is where you meet the archer. What is her name?
Oh, called Tao. Colony Tao.
Tao, right. So
Yeah.
it's like in the middle of the
In the
not quite the middle,
Macta.
maybe. Yeah, but
Yeah.
there's a conversation that happens between Manana and the rest of the party about the nature of what is good and what is evil. And they do an excellent job of
Oh,
actually
yeah.
explaining moral relativism and then also nihilism, where where Manana is asking like what makes the bad guys actually bad. And at first the party is like, well, they're evil.
And then
Well,
she
why are they
does
evil?
it.
Because they
She
kill
called.
people. Well, don't we kill people?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, and it's like, well, yeah, and they have a little bit of trouble with that, and that's a stretch of the game where prior to this, they go into like the philosophical underpinnings of nihilism, but like as a both a positive and a negative philosophy. And I'm like, they're doing a lot. There's something about the way this game presents its character interactions. I appreciate
Oh
it so much.
my god,
They
yes.
go. Some
I
of them
love the
are
cast.
go on forever, but they're interesting, and people they actually are they're working out ideas that are hard to find an answer to all the time. So I really like that.
Yeah, she gagged their asses like very quickly. I like that. I
Yeah,
like Riku has some good moments too throughout it, but also I like Riku as the comedy relief because
yeah.
if you switch to Uni as your character, she'll sometimes say, "Yeah, Uni's the boss." And then if you start a battle like right after that, she'll be like, "All right, the boss is about to get in it." And then Riku will literally say, "You're not the boss of Riku." And I'm like, what? I was like, what? Who came up with these interactions? Like, there's just a lot of like quality of life, like small like underpinnings where I'm just like, this is just it's just good. Like the
Yeah.
details make it so much better. They didn't need to do this shit. They could have just been like battle start, boom, 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 boom. But it's the character interactions and the heroes as you go throughout the whole game, and like you get to like certain points in the story, and you take like different heroes to different colonies. Their voice lines change. Like
Oh, that's
everything in
cool.
the everything in the game is constantly like changing based off of where you're at in the fucking story.
Yeah. I
It's great.
think that so I haven't finished the game, but I probably will. And there's a lot of really good ideas. Some of them are a little bit more limited than I wish they were. But it's fine because, it's you got to remember this is a Switch JRPG. And
Yeah.
they're pushing that engine which they've now been using for I want to say like 5 years
Oh, my Nintendo
pretty
Switch
hard.
screams bloody murder while I play the game.
Yeah, like it's the same engine that the last Xenoblade Chronicles um was written with, well, I'm saying written, but was produced within. So it's not like so this isn't like the RE engine, right? This is not gonna
Yeah.
do some crazy shit. So they're pushing it pretty hard. And of course, like the game is long and has quite a bit of supplementary material. My only like quibble with it is that once you kind of get halfway into the story and you have a lot of like side quests, their UI system and the way in which you manage and even get through a lot of those side quests is very clunky, and it makes some of
No.
them just feel like chores. But that doesn't
Oh.
take away from the game. Like the
Yeah.
game in and of itself is very, 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 very good. But I just wish that they had done things. For example, like they gate a lot of the quality of life improvements in the overworld behind the colony system, the colony
Yeah.
favor system, which is an incredible grind to get to some of the higher levels.
Yeah.
And I don't know if I really like that idea because it means that I'm spending a lot of time in the overworld doing things in order to make my time in the overworld less tedious. And that cycle, something about that seems wrong. I feel like I should probably be spending my time on things on like other activities that are not so repetitive, or if they're going to be repetitive, don't involve the kind of like uh traversal through empty spaces, maybe other things, mini games or other
Oh,
systems to get
yeah.
there. Because, for example, like your pickup radius and your walk speed, those two things shouldn't be. I shouldn't have to grind.
Upgradable.
Yeah, or if they are upgradable, I should not have to grind for 20 hours to get enough like points to push 10 colonies up high enough so that I can run a little faster. I feel like those types of quality of life things should be done a different way. Maybe you get like vehicles earlier. There's one particular one that
Mm.
is necessary for the story, or be able, once you unlock your what's the name of the Ouroboros form,
Oh,
that
okay.
like that maybe at that point in the story is when you unlock faster travel on the overworld map, not just teleporting or other things like that, right? Because they
Yeah.
put like even the pickup radius stuff, when you're late in the game and you've got to do a lot of quests that involve like there's one quest that you get right at like chapter 3 or 4 where you have to find 50 of a particular
Oh yeah, I didn't finish that
item
shit.
drop. Yes, and the reason why it's a pain in the ass is because it's in one zone that you can find them. It's a random pickup, and you have to basically like run through the zone in order to see if it's spawning on the ground anywhere. Things like that are you have to get 50 of them. You might find like two,
Yeah.
given their rarity system. It's things like that are what I would consider like padding the length of even some of these side quests. And there's other things that again, quality of life, that part of it, not a big fan. But the game itself, end to end, just like playing the story, the battle system, the class system and its freedom, the various like skill unlocks, awesome. And the characters are great. The dialogue is really good. Yeah, I like all that stuff. It's just that piece is annoying.
Yeah. I will say, I'm like, yeah, I'm in the middle of the final battle right now. And if you enjoyed the climax shit for Xenoblade 2, oh, you're gonna fucking get your entire life for this shit. Like, it's really fucking good. Like, it's like I was hooping and hollering. It's the like I think this is what a lot of reviewers were talking about when they were just like, there's one like just like ongoing scene of just like insanity. It's the probably the final shit, the final stuff. So like yeah, it's even if you don't want to do all the side content, just beat the story. Just beat the story. It's fucking worth it just for that fucking scene. Or well, I haven't even beat the story myself, but everything that's leading up to it and what I'm in the middle of, I'm just like, oh my god, this nigga's like one shot me and shit. Like I'm like this and that and the fuck. Yeah, it's good. It's enjoyable. And yeah, I see why they moved the date from like September to now because what else was gonna happen? Also, it makes me really excited to see what's gonna come with the Breath of the Wild 2 because I know a lot of these people went to go work on Breath of the Wild 2. So if this is what they're doing with this, because I think they did a lot with the system as far as like the draw distance and just like certain areas like you can like look out from certain areas and see like certain colonies from a completely different area and shit like that. And I'm just like, this is a lot. Like, oh my god. But also my Switch is burning to pieces, so there's also
Yeah.
that.
Okay. I think my recommendation is something that I talked about a little bit online. Um, Another manhwa, surprise, surprise, been
Oh,
reading lately called "The Story of a Low-Ranked Soldier Becoming a Monarch." Um, so I
becoming a
want to be very
monarch.
careful because what I will say will sound like I'm comparing it to some absolutely fantastic generational pieces of art, and I'm only just using them as a method of comparison.
Okay.
So it's a what I would like to, so this is a what I call like an internal isekai. So it takes place in a fantasy world. The main character dies after having lived a very shitty life, not getting where he needed to go, and dies in a pretty horrible way. And then through his method of reincarnation, reincarnates back into his own body, but earlier. So it's kind of time travel. It's kind of
Oh.
isekai, but it takes place all within the same fantasy world. And he comes back not as a child, but as a young man. So there's a war that's happening that the way it played out the first time, he lost a limb and then had to spend the rest of his life as a mercenary compensating for that fact. And so in the process, kind of taught himself how to be resourceful and dangerous and kind of like cut corners and cheat in order to win, but because he was not strong. Everything he tried to do that would require strength or skill or dexterity or anything else like that, he could never achieve whatever that top rank of it could be, and instead had to find other ways around it. So it presents itself very straightforwardly like that he's gone back in time to a point where right before horrible things happen to him and horrible things happen to the world, and he sets his sights on not just overcoming it and saving the lives of people who he cared about, whose fate was horrible because of the flow of history. But later, and even though it's in the title, it doesn't really happen until maybe the end of the first major arc. He kind of decides that the only way that he can really change what feels like an unchangeable history is to reach the very pinnacle of the society that he lives in, and the pinnacle of strength and the pinnacle of everything else. So it gets to the same beats that a lot of isekai do, where
Yeah.
it's ultimately a power fantasy. It's ultimately about rewriting wrongs and saving certain people's lives, but it doesn't go as far as many of them do to try to make every situation one in which the main character has to be perfect and they have to shock and surprise everyone and save every life and become the object of affection of every person, because they established that there clearly are things that he can't change, things that are very impactful on the fate of the world, and that becomes his motivation for why he wants more power. It's not that he has reincarnated with a perfect history and is just sort of going along like a robot doing all the right thing, which is a big problem, I think, narratively in a lot of isekai stories.
Yeah.
It's that he realizes he must chart a new history, but understands there may be some stuff I just can't. I don't want to happen. I'll do everything I can to stop it, but I can't stop it. So what do you do after that so that you're not a victim? So that's part one, is that it's a refinement a little bit on a bunch of tropes that I usually get very tired of, but with a fresh take and with a main character who is not instantly overpowered from some prior history. He's got to work. There's a lot of struggle and there's a lot of tenuous stuff. It's good stuff. Now, the reason why I'm actually recommending it is not the story. The story's fine, but it's
Oh.
another comparison, which is if you read the first run of chapters, you might look at the art and say this is serviceable. It's a little bare bones. It's cool. I see what it can do. I see how the art communicates a lot of the power system and other things like that in neat ways. But it gets better. The art gets better to the point where towards the current, the current arc, the current road chat, there's some fucking baller ass panels, like things where I'm like, I need to show people how fucking crazy this series is, and it's a crazy series. First of all, a lot of people die.
Is it on
There's
the
a
level
lot
of
of
like
killing.
My Summoner or whatever?
So those are very painterly. So I would say that that's
Okay.
just an aesthetic that my summon got from the beginning. It looked like you
Uh-huh.
never see like a lot of these like mobile card games or like Magic the Gathering where
Yeah.
they'll have a lot of great art that's on these static cards, and so that's where they get over. Is they're gorgeous to look at. My summon just took that approach from the beginning with a lot of the backgrounds and all that stuff. So that was a I would actually compare this one more to what's the best series I can think of that has some really good art. The detail and the fidelity of the action scenes in particular starts to approach kind of what God of High School can do.
Oh,
It
okay.
starts to get there. They if you look at the first few chapters, the character designs are very simplified. You can they communicate action very well. You can distinguish between people, but they're not beautiful. They're serviceable. There's some shit that happens because of how overpowered so many characters get, where you're just reading this panel straight down and you're like, oh, I see. There are literally 200 people in this panel, and I could track our character slicing and dicing his or her way through all these people and just flexing, sending bodies flying, limbs flying. I've never seen more heads chopped off in a series in my life, and this is actually a series where there's not much blood. It's not, they don't do their work, or the artists don't do their work with fountains of blood. Motherfucker, heads are popping off left and right from the very beginning. Like I see a group of dudes, I'm like, oh, all these heads are coming off. And then the next panel, our main character's like dash through them, heads are flying in every direction. People just get murdered in the ugliest way possible, even from the beginning, and as you start to get to that good art about halfway, I think they're in the 80 chapter range, so around like chapter 30 or 40, when you start getting that good shit, when the power system kicks in, when like people are chaining abilities and like running through whole armies worth of dudes, like 1v100, or like dudes be stepping up, like, you know, I'll be the one to, and then the head comes flying off. It is actually a very satisfying thing to read, kind of like playing a Call of Duty game, but the old ones, like the World War II, where you were always just shooting heads and the helmets would pop up, and that was your little sign that you got a headshot. It feels that way, just with like swords and sorcery. So I shared some panels online that I was just like, I was astounded by how hype it was able to get, the level that they got to with the art presentation, and everything got clearer, more special effects, but also like they kept a lot of the character design elements that are simple, that kind of make it easy for you to pick out who's who and who's doing what. And when my man gets his squad together, like, and they're at full power, this shit is fucking crazy. I want to see those shots of him, like, you know, one man army versus it, but I also like it when everyone else pops in and you're just like, oh, this is dope. Someone's like coming down with a lightning bolt, another dude's like slicing guys in half on the bottom. You see, like, you know, the aftermath of like a big old punch that sent like 100 dudes flying through the side of a mountain, and you're like, yo, this is actually super hype. So I want to recommend this series. It's got it's fairly deep in its run, so there's a lot if you want to jump in, but it's not like a 500 chapter Tower of God situation.
Yeah,
it started out in a good place, and then as it went along, both at the story level and the art level, it did level itself up, proverbially, to
this is what you were posting about.
Yes.
Oh, that's what those are from. Yeah, I saw the helmet shit, and I was like, the hell is going on in this shit?
Dude's heads just be popping. It's popping. They just pop it off. It's great. So I'm very enthusiastic about any series that sees what it's doing right, doubles down, and gets better. And if the art had stayed where it was in like the first half, I was fine with that. It was enjoyable. It worked for me. But and now I'm like, is it gonna get even better, or is it gonna get more ambitious as these characters get crazier and crazier abilities? Are we gonna see like some wild shit that you never thought of before? Like, what are we gonna get? I'm pumped to see more. So yes, the low rank soldier becoming a monarch, worth a read, I think, if you can find it anywhere. I think it's on Webtoons up to chapter 44 officially in English, and then there are some groups out there that are translating it
that are like further in.
Okay. Yeah, I think around chapter 86 or 87. So that's a lot. I mean, if you think that these are weekly releases, it's about 2 years worth, or maybe a little bit less.
Yeah. Okay. Alrighty. Well, that'll be it for this week then. If you haven't already, make sure you follow us on social medias, TikTok, Twitter, Instagram. But Twitter is anime_savants, while everything else is just regular anime savants. We're also on Facebook and YouTube. Also, if you're not watching this, we have it in video format in addition to podcast format. So, you can go either or and see the crazy faces and things like that.
Yep. And if you want to hit me up, I'm on Twitter at Neural Handshake. And shout out to the people who pointed me both to the news and announcement about Tower of God season 2, as well as the Witch from Mercury prologue actually being a full episode. I would not have known were it not for some timely heads up. So thank you very much for that.
And yeah, that's all. Bye.
Peace out, y'all.